If you scare easily, this story is not for you, because once you hear it, you'll never be able to forget it. I'd suggest don't listen alone, and before you continue, say a prayer, whatever your faith may be. You're going to need it. American's most haunted house, the Amityville House. Let's begin.
Have you ever looked at a house and thought, it looks normal from the outside, but inside, something unspeakable has happened? What if I told you that one house in America is so famous, so terrifying, that people around the world still call it the most haunted house in the USA? This is not just a ghost story. This is the real-life nightmare of the Amityville Horror House. The house we are talking about stands at 112 Ocean Avenue in the quiet village of Amityville, New York. It was built in 1924, a big Dutch colonial-style house with a sloping roof and those two eye-like windows in the attic. From the outside, it looked beautiful, a dream house for any American family. But behind those walls, the story that unfolded would shock the entire nation. In the 1960s, the house was owned by the DeFeo family. The father, Ronald DeFeo Sr., lived there with his wife Louise and their 5 children. Ronald Jr., also called Butch, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John Matthew. At first, they looked like a normal middle-class family, but inside the house, life was not so perfect. Ronald Sr. was known to be strict and often abusive. Arguments and fights were common, but no one could have imagined what would happen one dark night in November 1974. It was the night of November 13th, 1974, a cold, quiet night in the small village of Amityville, New York. Families in the neighborhood were asleep in their warm beds, unaware that inside the large Dutch colonial house at 112 Ocean Avenue, a nightmare was about to unfold, one that would make headlines across America and later the entire world. Inside that house lived the DeFeo family. The father, Ronald DeFeo Sr., was known to be a strict man. The mother, Louise, tried to hold the family together. Their children, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John Matthew, were young, full of dreams, living the life of any normal American family in the 70s. And then there was the eldest son, Ronald Butch DeFeo Jr., 23 years old, troubled and often in conflict with his father. That night, Butch took a .35 caliber Marlin rifle, a powerful hunting gun. While his family slept peacefully, he moved room to room. One by one, he shot his father, his mother, and his 4 siblings, 6 family members, all killed in their beds. And here's the part that shook everyone to the core. Every single victim was found lying face down. No signs of a struggle. No one tried to escape. Not a single person woke up, even though the sound of a rifle firing inside a house is deafening. Think about it. One gunshot can wake up the whole neighborhood. Yet in that house, 6 people were murdered, and not a single scream was heard. Not a single body moved from its place. How was that possible? This is the question that still haunts investigators, paranormal researchers, and anyone who dares to study this case. Some believe Butch had an accomplice, maybe even someone who helped him control the family before the murders. Others believe something darker was at play, something supernatural. Many people whisper that an evil presence inside the house kept everyone frozen, paralyzed, unable to move, almost as if the house itself wanted them dead. By the next day, the horror was discovered. The once happy DeFeo house was now a crime scene soaked in tragedy. Neighbors stood outside, shocked, watching as bodies were carried out one after another. The image of 6 coffins lined up would forever scar the memory of the town. But the story didn't end there. When Butch was arrested, he gave different stories every time he was questioned. First, he claimed the murders were done by a mafia hitman, suggesting his family had been targeted by organized crime. Later, he changed his story and said that he had killed them, but only because voices inside the house told him to do it. He described hearing whispers, commands, something urging him to destroy his own family. The courts didn't believe the voices story. They found him guilty of 6 counts of murder. Butch was sentenced to life in prison, and yet, the mystery of that night remains unsolved. Why didn't anyone scream? Why didn't anyone run? Was Butch lying about the voices, or was he telling the truth about something far darker, something no one could see? That night, 112 Ocean Avenue stopped being a family home. It became a place of death. And as the world would soon find out, the murders were only the beginning of the nightmare. Just over a year later, in December 1975, the Lutz family bought the house. George and Kathy Lutz, along with Kathy's 3 children, moved in. They knew about the murders, but the house was cheap. $80,000 for a huge home. They thought they could handle it, but they were wrong. From the very first day, strange things began to happen.
The Lutz family, George, Kathy, and their 3 children, moved into the house at 112 Ocean Avenue in December 1975. They knew the tragic history of the DeFeo murders, but the house came fully furnished at a low price, and for them, it seemed like a new beginning. But instead of happiness, what they found was 28 days of pure horror. Even in the dead of winter, their heating system worked perfectly. Yet, in certain rooms, especially around the staircase and the basement, the air was ice cold. No matter how high they turned up the thermostat, these spots never warmed. George often described it as if something invisible was standing there, sucking the heat out of the room. These cold patches felt unnatural, almost as if a ghostly figure was present, watching them. Soon after, the walls of the house began to bleed a thick green slime. It oozed from keyholes, from cracks in the walls, and sometimes even dripped from the ceiling. George tried cleaning it, but the slime always came back, sticky and foul-smelling. It didn't behave like any ordinary mold or liquid. It felt alive, as if the house itself was bleeding out its sickness. In the middle of winter, when flies should have been long dead, one room, the sewing room, suddenly became filled with hundreds of buzzing flies. They covered the windows, the ceiling, and the walls. George and Kathy killed them again and again, but within hours, the flies always came back. The strangest part? When they smashed them, their bodies disappeared as if they had never existed. The buzzing never left their ears, and Kathy said the flies seemed to move together, almost as if controlled by something. At random times, the house filled with horrible odors. The smell was a mixture of rotten flesh, sewage, and sulfur. It would appear suddenly and vanish without reason. No matter how much Kathy cleaned or sprayed perfume, the stench always returned, especially at night when they were alone in the dark. Perhaps the most terrifying experience came from their young daughter, Missy. She began talking to an imaginary friend she called Jody, but Jody wasn't a normal playmate. Missy described her as a giant pig with glowing red eyes. George once looked out the window and swore he saw the creature staring back at him from the yard, its red eyes burning in the dark. Even worse, when a priest visited, he claimed to see those same eyes glaring at him from inside the house. Kathy began to have violent nightmares about the murders. She dreamed of the DeFeo children being shot, and when she woke up, she always knew the exact times of their deaths, even though she had never been told. One night, she claimed she was lifted off the bed and floated in the air. George woke up to see her suspended above him. her face twisted in terror before she suddenly dropped back onto the mattress. She also woke one morning with strange red welts all over her body, as if invisible hands had clawed at her in the night. Almost every night, the Lutz family heard strange voices, whispers, and footsteps. Doors slammed on their own. The children said they heard screams calling their names from the basement. At times, the voices were so clear that George thought someone had broken into the house, but no one was ever there. Perhaps the most disturbing transformation was in George Lutz himself. Normally calm and kind, he became short-tempered, violent, and obsessed. He stopped going to work, grew a scruffy beard, and spent his days chopping wood endlessly. He later admitted he felt like the house was inside his mind, controlling his thoughts. At 3:15 a.m. every night, the exact time of the DeFeo murders, George would wake up without fail, drenched in sweat, feeling as if someone was standing right beside his bed. The activity grew worse each day. Doors ripped off their hinges, windows smashed, and the family reported seeing dark shadows moving in the halls. On their last night, the family experienced what they described as pure chaos: screams, banging, furniture moving by itself. That night, they grabbed their children, ran out of the house barefoot, and never returned. They left everything behind: their clothes, their furniture, even food still on the dining table, as if escaping from a nightmare. The Lutz family's 28 days inside the Amityville house remain one of the most famous paranormal cases in history. Was it all real, or was it imagination fueled by fear? Nobody knows. But one thing is certain: the horrors they described turned 112 Ocean Avenue into the most infamous haunted house in America. When the Lutz family told their story, it shocked America. Newspapers, magazines, and TV channels all reported about the Amityville Horror. In 1977, a book called The Amityville Horror was published, telling their story in detail. The book became a bestseller. Later, in 1979, Hollywood released the Amityville Horror movie, which made the story world famous. But soon, people began to ask questions. Some said the Lutz family made the story up to get money from books and movies. A lawyer who once worked with them claimed they created the ghost story over a bottle of wine. Skeptics argued, how can a house be haunted when later families lived there without any problems? But believers say the Lutz family had nothing to gain by leaving their dream home after just 28 days, and they point to the strange details, like the murders, the voices, the slime, as proof that something truly evil was in that house. After the Lutz family, several other families lived in the house. Most of them reported no paranormal activity at all. In fact, the current owners say the house is perfectly normal, but the legend of Amityville has already taken a life of its own. Books, documentaries, and over 30 movies have been made about it, and even today, tourists drive past Ocean Avenue just to see the house. So here's the real question: was the Amityville Horror a clever hoax, or was it the most terrifying haunting in American history? Some say it was all lies, but others believe the evil that made Ronald DeFeo kill his family still lingers in that house, waiting for its next victims. Next time you see a quiet house on a peaceful street, ask yourself, what secrets are hidden behind those walls? Because sometimes the scariest monsters are not the ones we see in movies. Sometimes they're inside the house, watching us, even when we think we're safe.